Would you tell me, does this apply to you? I want to talk about your attitude to service. Over the past 10 years, I'd predict it's changed quite considerably. Whether it was Anne Robinson who started it, who knows, but there's been considerable change. If you think about it, would you agree? You have changed considerably in your attitude to service over the past 10 years. Would you agree with that? I mean, would you agree with these things? What used to impress you, whoa, look at that, you now just aren't impressed with it. So they're doing that too, are they? Not impressed anymore. How about what you used to accept as okay isn't okay now? I will not accept that. I will say something about it. How about this one? What used to pass unnoticed, you now look for it or spot it. Would you agree with that? And finally, what used to have an impact, wow, that's fantastic, now has no impact at all. Oh, so you've got a new IT system, have you? All right. New computers. Oh, yeah, okay. Not impressed. This was predicted. It was predicted in the 1980s. Many people predicted it. The first person I read predicting this was an American woman called Faith Popcorn. There she is. She wrote a book called The Popcorn Report. By the way, she's an Italian, and her name was Poppen something, and the Americans couldn't pronounce Poppen. And so, rather than struggle with a name they couldn't pronounce, by deed poll, she changed it to Popcorn. So she's now called Faith Popcorn. But she runs a business called Brain Reserve International. They're one of the world's best trend predictors. In 1984-85, she predicted this, vigilante consumerism. Aren't we surrounded by it now? When a student can take Barclays Bank to court because of the overcharges they made him when he went into overdraft and get settled out of court and now cost $2 billion of money to be taken from banks backed by their customers, a student calls that, we've got vigilante consumerism. When a woman can take the health service to court because the region she lives in won't prescribe her the drugs to cure her of breast cancer and win, so she gets her drugs, we have vigilante consumerism. Would you agree with that? We're surrounded in it. You're part of it. You're doing it. So your customers are too. Would you agree with that? If it's the way we think, it's the way they think. They're doing the same things. And my point of all this is this, that if the way you act and your customers act is no different to the way you used to act and they used to act, the stuff that used to work before won't work anymore the same way. Would you agree with that? So the whole point is something new is needed. We need something different. That's not to say we stop doing what we used to do. We still need to do it. But it alone won't do it anymore. There's an academic from the University of Stockholm Business School called Kjell Nordström. He's quite a thinker. But he uses a phrase which has haunted me ever since I heard him use it. And he says that the techniques that got us to where they are, that made us successful, many of them fall into a category now which he calls necessary but not sufficient. We need to still do them, but they're no longer sufficient to give us the success in the future that they gave us in the past. But the question is, so what is this new stuff? Well, you're there already. The new stuff in using service in a way to influence behaviour is experience as opposed to service. I chair the European Conference, or I have for the past 5 years, in London every year. And I'm intrigued to see titles when you see all the delegates there. And I'd say 5 years ago, there was probably not one, maybe one or two people out of the 800 who come every year, whose title had in it, by the way, these are all directors, heads of, and so on, usually something to do with service, because it's the European Conference on Service Management. Hardly any within in their title, customer experience. I'd say that 20% or more now of the people attending have in their title somewhere the words customer experience. Group customer experience director, director of customer experience, head of customer experience manager, that's appearing. This is the focus that I think the smart people are on. So you're on the right tack, I would say. So how do we use it? This fellow makes a suggestion.